This is the regular meeting. Tuesday, April. Are present, so we have a quorum. I don't have a chair report. I will ask the ad hoc subcommittee people, leaders or whatever, if they have anything to update us on. We have, I think, one committee that was appointed last month, which is, I think, Mr. Pearson and Mr. McCann. Mr. Henderson, yes. And I think we have the holdover. I think, there was a committee. It was the committee that was working on the items that have been approved by the board. The committees, I think they're disbanded. So, but was one other one.
Well, there's the overhead.
The overhead committee, yeah, which was kind of an extension. That was the one we appointed last month. Yeah, I think that's it.
Our first meeting will be in July.
Yeah, good. It was the committee. I would like to, congratulate the committees because that had done the work that went to the board, because we did the new reserve policy, and we did the new there was another policy that was on the agenda on Thursday. I got that where the representative subcommittees work. Oh, the revenues, yeah. Which, went to the board. It didn't succeed in some of the goals. But there were two items, two recommendations that were adopted. And I don't know if you all followed what's going on there, but as a result of that, there's a new subcommittee, a new ad hoc committee, I should say, formed, consisting of me and Michael Thomas, to go, sort of attack this issue of overhead of basically specifically what we do in the way of park maintenance or open space maintenance on the ranch, exactly. So to get a much more granular view of that, account for time spent, not just contracts written for outside people who do contractors to work, but also time spent by our staff and what they do in terms of ranch maintenance. And that also includes things like homeless encampments and stuff like that. And then to kind of integrate that with, integrate that with our financial planning, but also to have a, go back to this FFRP and revisit that issue of who does what, and maybe formalize it, like as was recommended, formalize it, like it never really has been formalized in a policy as to who has what responsibilities. So we'll see how that works, because we'll get the information first about where we are actually working and how much we're working on what at the ranch. And then we'll go from there to talk about how we might want to change the policy. Yeah.
Can I
sure.
ask a question,
Sure.
please? I don't believe I have ever seen FFRP's lease to the CCSD regarding the ranch. Since we own the ranch, there's got to be some kind of a agreement with FFRP.
There's a management plan.
And we haven't seen it.
It's there.
Where would I find it?
It's on the website, as Ms. Dodson was saying. It's on the website, and I could email it to you too. It's a PDF document. It lays out who does what, and
what can be done
and what can be done, what can't be done by whom. It's
But their role in
very
doing
extensive.
their role in participating and giving money.
It doesn't specifically talk about FFRP, okay? It talks about a firm to hold the
thank you.
Easement, okay?
Mhm.
And so that's really their job, responsibility, whatever it is, to hold the easement and make sure that it's not encroached.
Right.
So the management plan is supposed to have this appendix. Says the responsibilities of the ranch manager, which is us, CCSD.
Yes.
Are such and such.
Yeah.
And those of the easement holder are such and such.
Mhm.
And so that document never was finished,
Mhm.
and that's what they're going.
Yeah, that's never been spelled out. So that's what the recommendation of the subcommittee was. And so we are going to be working on that. The two are in conjunction because accounting for our time and how much we actually spend in terms of person hours on the ranch, or the man hours in this case, is the input that we need to make that this, come back to FFRP with our proposals in our case, whatever. But yeah, the management plan, if you, it's on the website, and I think Haley just sent a link
Send it to you.
to me, and I can send it on to you. Yeah, it's
Okay.
easy to find.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
The, if the Friends of the Ranch land aren't designated, do they need to be as the easement?
They are, what technically, there's a predecessor, a nonprofit group that was a predecessor to the FFRP. FFRP was basically just a renamed version of that group. They're specifically holders of the easement. So they hold the easement as, which basically dictates what can get done, what can be done, what can't be done. And so they have that authority, actually.
Okay,
It's
so
pretty considerable.
so it's been designated to them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
they definitely hold
misunderstood
it to the
because it
easement.
didn't sound like the current work in practice is that they have that, but it didn't sound like
Yeah.
they're actually called out as being that person.
They're two
Okay.
documents kind of next to each other. There's the easement document and there's a management plan.
Yeah.
The management plan kind of spells out the details of what it means to, do all these have these responsibilities. Easement is what the policy is what can be done, what can't be done.
Okay.
And there are two different policies. There are definitely two different standards for what's now the community park and what's the rest of the ranch. Most of it's a preserve, including some of the area east of the highway. But the community park plan, which is also another plan, the easement does apply to that, but its terms are different. It allows things that are not allowed on the preserve.
On the reserve.
And that's also online, right? It's with the same web page basically as you'll find the management plan. So any other questions before we move ahead? Thanks. Committee member communications. We might have already covered a couple of them, but anybody have some short thing to share with us in terms of their activities that are relevant to the committee or any questions, brief comments? Good. This is time for public comment, which is for items not on this agenda, but under the purview of the finance committee, which means any fiscal matters for this CCSD board. We have, I think, the Swartzes, Laura and Crosby Swartz are here online, and we have Mr. Dick Clark here in person as our public. Do either of you want to make a comment on items not on the agenda? Mr. Clark? Mr. and Mrs. Swartz? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes. Consideration to approve the March 26th, 2024 regular meeting minutes. Any corrections, necessary additions anybody wants to make to the minutes? I saw none. I'll consider entertain a motion for approval of the minutes and the consent agenda.
Motions.
A second.
I can say that.
Been moved by Mr. McCann, seconded by Mr. Hendrickson, that this board approves the regular meeting minutes. Take a roll call. Mr. McCann.
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Ms. Chrisman.
Aye.
Anderson. Ms. McDowell.
Hi.
The motion passes 5-0. On to regular business. The discussion, this is the discussion and consideration of the third quarter report. Our action today, which if we take it would be to recommend that we received and filed by the board. I'll turn this over to Ms. Denise Fritz.
Hey, so, this is our third quarter report. It's reflecting all of the district activity through March 31st, 2024. It's also including an updated CIP list indicating how much we've spent on each project so far, and an updated PG&E IGA project accounting. One item I got today was our third quarter report for investments, so I was hoping to include it in the third quarter report, but I think based on our discussion last time, I will just have it as a consent agenda item at the board meeting. It just wasn't ready to include in the third quarter report. And so some things I would like to point out is we're still, so for the general fund, our revenues and fire we've had, some issues with the safer reimbursement. So that is not included. We just have worked through all of those issues. And so we got our reimbursement and we're back on track of submitting reimbursement so that the revenues are a little bit lower. As well as our property taxes as usual kind of trickle in. They do not come in consistently. So you'll see some deficits in the general fund due to just cash flow. And
At page 11.
well, the general fund starts the page 11 is fire. Yeah.
Yes, it's eight is the overall general, right? Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
8 is the summary of all general fund. So you can see it's up, there's a deficit of $548,000 approximately. So you can go through each department if you would like I said, for fire, which starts on page 11. We don't have that safer reimbursement, as well as the weed abatement revenues have not fully covered. We've had to spend a little bit more on our weed abatement contract this year, as you all know. So the revenues are not completely covering the expenditures so far this year. So I think, we are on track expense wise in that department. So facilities and resources has a slight deficit as well, which there is a budgeted deficit in that department. So facilities and resources starts on page 18. And again, they are also subject to the property taxes coming in. And so, we do a reconciliation before the end of the year to make sure all the property taxes are reported. But throughout the year, there's a lag in property tax.
So it's just a timing issue.
Yeah, it's a timing issue. And we are on track to get all of our property taxes. So it is the amount that was budgeted for. Then there's the pros budget starts on page 29. And the expenditures that you'll see in there are for the skate park. There's activity continually going and a little bit for the East Ranch restroom. So we are continuing. There's definitely expenditures coming through for the skate park and everything. And it's very exciting that those projects are active and going. And you can also see where we bring in the contribution from the Cambria Community Council. That on page 29.
CCC project.
Yeah, the
Contribution, yeah.
project contribution, so we bring those funds in, as the invoices or as the expenditures happen. We have a process and we get that money, and so that funding is coming in as well.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Question anytime, yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, yeah. Papers.
Do you have, on the grant that we're going to get for the skate park, Do you know if it's a reimbursable grant or whether they give you the money up front or how that?
We
works?
got a grant for the restroom.
No.
Is that the one you're talking
No,
about?
it's the skate park grant. I think it's reimbursing.
It's reimbursement.
Reimbursement.
It's a cash flow problem. That's, we had to go through and you did the resolution to
Yeah,
provide the cash flow on it.
yes,
Right, I remember that, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That wouldn't show, yeah, obviously it wouldn't show. yeah.
No, that we haven't. We did get money for 47,500, I believe, for specifically for the restroom portion of the project. So that revenue is not reflected here because it's in the revenue collected in advance count, waiting for those expenditures to come through and then we'll.
Yeah.
we'll let that go.
Any other questions so far? I think, Keith?
Yeah, I noticed that on the bottom of page 29 that the, under the expenses, there's the one for the grant writer.
Mhm.
So it's not specific to this, but do we tag as expense the cost of that to whatever project it is? And was this the cost of securing that bathroom? Grant?
No.
No.
No, so that's a budget right now, the $3,000, and we basically contracted with a grant writer. There's a little bit of budget in a few different departments for grant writing, and so we contracted with a grant writer for that.
Okay.
And so as he's doing work, we're taking it out of the specific departments. I think he's been focused mostly in utilities at this point.
I see. Okay,
Yeah, 'cause-
so he doesn't have essentially not a salary, but he's paid on the grants that he writes?
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
It's under contract, it's not, yeah,
Yes.
it's not in-house.
No,
Right,
not a
contract is
salary.
contract.
He's a salary employee.
Yeah.
He just, we have a contract with him for up to a certain amount.
yeah, okay.
So
And then I believe General Manager McElhaney is kind of directing his attention to where
mm,
he would
wants
like it to be.
Yeah, okay, good.
that 3,000 amount for grant writer in the pros budget, it's been there. It's a placeholder in a way until they get a project that will require in the judgment of the general manager requires the services of the grant writer. That'll sit there basically. Yeah, essentially. Any other questions?
Thanks.
As we move,
It just
Scott.
page 31, on, the capital outlay, got a positive 455. That's just projects waiting to happen.
Correct, because we do budget for, we have a budget in there for the East Ranch restroom, which is 349, the skate park, and there's 3 years of reserve funding so we funded the skate park project, I think we committed to $187,000. I'm going off the top of my head.
So 178, I think. but close,
178,
yeah.
yeah. So that is all reflected in there.
Yeah.
We have funded all for 3 years. So it's a little misleading, but that's just the way that we've budgeted.
Yeah.
Our capital projects, because that money will not be spent this year.
That's, yeah.
It's a multi-year.
that's when it's ready to be spent when it's ready for construction to start. Basically, the idea is, what is the point of construction?
And that budget has been in there, I mean, since it's been at the district, so,
Okay.
and maybe
A big,
before.
a year,
then,
year and a
yeah.
half or so.
And it's another, thing where you have the distortion to an operating budget because you have capital items included in it.
Yeah.
But, makes it.
Yeah, which is not my favorite way.
Oh, I
but
know,
it's just-
I know.
For sure. I have a question on this. Yeah, this is really not a budget question, but is there a design out there for what this is going to look like? Or is that still in the development stage?
This is the skate park.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, there's a design, and quite a bit actually, as the engineering's been done on it and, pretty detailed. Haley, do you know where that stuff would be on the website? If it's on the website, the design of the skate park, no, the visuals and the, engineering reports, or is it something that's in the agendas?
Something in the agendas. We don't really have.
I kinda find it.
Part page, I
Okay,
mean, I
I'll-
can build something.
I'll, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
I'll
I
hunt
think
it.
it's something
Yeah,
online.
I'll hunt it up. Okay.
It's been, there's a lot of that information.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's, yeah,
Yes.
I think where you.
Does State Cambria have it on their website?
State Cambria has it, I have it too.
Cambria.org, which is the,
yeah, 'cause we're in the permitting, deep into the permitting phase, so all of those
well, actually,
documents.
we got the permit. We just got the permit, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, all the more so because we already submitted all this detailed information to the county. We got the permit last month, I think it was. or like earlier this month, from the planning commission. So that it's, something that's readily available. We can get it to you. They can already get it.
I'll give you, you can look at my.
Any questions before we go forward into, I guess, the enterprise fund? No, administration, rather, sorry.
We presented to the county
Yeah.
on April 11th to get
Yeah.
the permit.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Moving forward. Denise?
So we have our, general fund. And there's nothing really interesting there. This is where the overhead gets, that all of the expenditures in the general fund get allocated out on a quarterly basis to all the departments, and then I do, in the fourth quarter, I will do actuals. And true that up. So the enterprise funds on page 40, you can see the summary that has just the summary of the water fund, wastewater fund. The WRF operations and WRF capital. So the water fund has an overall positive of $66,000. The end of the third quarter wastewater, you can see in a deficit, and the WRF operations is in, positive.
Surplus, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a surplus. Again, the budget does include planned capital expenditures. Some of those can be a little misleading because it's multi-year projects and all of that stuff. So this does not include a billing that we just did. Those revenues are probably going to be seen in April.
Mhm.
And then we have one more billing left for the year. So as you can see on page 49 for water, those are all the capital. We budgeted $2.2 million of capital expenditures. Those expenditures are not all gonna happen.
Mhm.
And on page. Jump forward. Wastewater on page 64 and 65. Those are actually, we have the capital expenditures budgeted as well as all of the WRF.
Mhm.
Or I'm sorry, SST project.
Mhm.
So those are all in there. For that capital outlay, we actually do bring in revenue to that because we're drawing down bond funds
Mhm.
as those are expenditures. So theoretically, it should be a net zero to the bottom line.
Mhm.
And on page 65, you can also see our payments for those bonds there. And yeah, any questions?
Any questions?
You may have said it, and I got distracted, escaped the board. Anyway, back on page 40, when we're talking about the water fund and we're looking, at that it's the first block, I guess, there. And the revenue for the period was roughly $14,000 on an expense of $400,000. Did you say something about what?
So we bill every other month. So April or March, we didn't bring in
I see.
any. So the money came in April, which is not included in this report.
Okay, so next month's, if we look at next month's report, then you would be over by $400,000, basically.
Probably more than that because
Oh.
we'll have revenue collected in April, but we'll also, my next one is fourth quarter. We also have a last billing in June,
I see.
which I make sure is posted in this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Yeah.
that explains it.
So-
Thanks.
So just to refresh too, on this, on how the, what's called period activity. Is it still just monthly?
Yeah, so that
That's,
period
that's
of
the trick, that's the
just
tricky
March.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just March. The fiscal activity is through March.
July.
So that's 9 months. Yeah, that's the 9 months. So the fiscal activity one is, it tells you a little more about where we are actually, because period activity can be kind of deceptive.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just dealing with 1 month. This is the way our accounting software works.
And our billing cycle.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
If we billed every month, we would see,
Yeah.
monthly charges.
It would be more
or revenue.
normalized.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
more consistent, I should say, yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Um,
Perhaps with the new meters, maybe they'll go to monthly billing.
Yeah, I know that was brought up in a meeting somewhere, someone had
at the
mentioned
board
it.
meeting.
Yeah, so once we get that implemented and, feel comfortable with the system, that could definitely be a conversation at the board level if
Mhm.
we wanted to.
Also billing by fractions of
Yeah.
units. Just- Which over time doesn't really make a difference, because over time it all evens out, the wash, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, some people like to be just very, very, very precise, I guess.
They're working on their monthly budgets.
Right, exactly.
Crosby wants.
Yeah.
Down the neck.
Yeah, I don't, any further questions on the presentation?
No.
I want to ask for public comment at this point, if there aren't any further questions.
Yeah, and then I'll just, the CIP was, this is, like I said, for the rest of this year, I am using the old model. That was approved by the board, so you'll just see under each, so like on page 70, you can see that this year we spent $13,163 for skate park improvements as of this year. And the restroom, we spent $24,000. So this is just giving, only what we've spent this year, so you can kind of see where the new model will give us a lot more information. We'll be able to see not only what we spent this year, but cumulatively what we've spent on the project. So it's just updated, and then the wastewater COP, I always include a summary of that. That is including any prior year activity as well.
So this,
Page 78, so we've spent 3.2 million so far on the wastewater projects.
this CIP list is in the old format.
Yes.
It's not the one that was recently approved, and so the new budget will have, the preliminary budget will have the new form.
Correct.
Which is next month, next month, exactly. Turn this over to public comment, and I noticed that either Crosby or Laura has a hand up. So if you wish to speak.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Chairman Gray and everybody else. It's Laura speaking. I wanted to go back to the general fund part of the report. And just a question, I know the property taxes are paid in 2 increments in December and then April. But why does the county hold up our part of the property taxes and have it, as Ms. Fritz said, dribble in? It seems like if they collect it, they should pass it on to us. And then the other question on that is that there's a fairly hefty delinquent charge on those taxes to the public that doesn't pay them. Do we get any part of that? Or does the county keep the delinquent even though they're holding up our money? So, I mean, every bit counts, and this is a place that I think revenue should come in quicker and possibly even a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. That question is interesting about the timing of property taxes. Of course, remember, this is through March. And the deadline is April 10th for the second installment. So if people are putting it off a little bit, it wouldn't be reflected here, would it? But
And I.
Denise, yeah, Denise, go ahead.
I can look at the actual timing, from what I've seen, and I would want to write it out, but there seems to be we don't really start getting property taxes until like September or October. So we have a whole few months of our fiscal year for that. We're not really receiving anything. And again, this is just from memory, so I'd have to put it in a spreadsheet so I could give you actual information. And then they've kind of changed where now they're giving us something every month. I don't know how they calculate what they give us and why, if property taxes, I mean, they're paid twice a year. Some people pay them upfront for the whole year. And so, they give us some, monthly, as far as any sort of penalty that is paid by a property tax owner, I could ask my contact.
Yeah.
I don't off the top of my head remember seeing a line item for that on our property tax checks, because everything is line itemed out of
Right,
what it's
right.
for. But I can look into that and ask my contact at the county of how they handle that.
Yeah, that's a question I've never actually thought about either. My assumption actually is that it probably does go into the pot for everybody, but we don't know.
What percentage comes back?
Oh, the percentage comes, I think the county has a,
Percentage of.
Yeah, so it's about 3%.
3% of the property tax?
Yeah, we get about 3%.
Do we get interest on any of that money? No.
no, we get a, and the county, I think there is a small charge, I think, for their administrative charge. It's off the top for everybody. It's
Yes,
off the top for
yeah,
everybody.
we do get a charge
And
for.
and on the
administrative
delinquency, when I asked 5 years ago or whenever it was that I asked, they have administrative work that they have to do with the delinquency,
I
so
bet.
they suck that, right?
Yeah, probably doesn't even cover the cost.
So when a home closes escrow and taxes are in that settlement, it goes right to the county?
Right.
Yeah, we
Everything
don't
goes-
get direct,
Okay.
everything goes through the county
Okay.
Yeah.
first.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other public comment? Sorry, no comment. I'll bring this back to the board for discussion. Discussion and hopefully a motion. Mr. Pearson.
I will move that, we recommend to the board of directors that the year 23-24 third quarter budget reports be received and filed.
Do I have a second? It's been moved by Mr. Pearson and seconded by Mr. Hendrickson that this committee recommend to the board that it receive and file the third quarter budget report. Call the roll. Mr. Pearson.
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Aye.
Mr. McCann.
Aye.
Ms. Chrisman.
Aye.
Ms. McDowell. Motion passes 5-0.
So, Tom, on page 72,
Mhm.
line number 28. And on page, where did I see this? I'm really anal on that one.
This is the Van Gordon House demo.
Yeah, but it's over here on another line item. This one's 2 and the other one's 1.
Really? Oh,
um,
demo Van Gordon House. No, it's 3 on
Yeah.
one of them. It's
Yeah.
3 on one of them.
Yeah,
Now, that's interesting that,
where did I
that's,
see that?
well, but it is an interesting question is,
There-
when things turn up twice,
Yeah,
I don't know if it's the only one that turns up twice.
It's on page 74.
74, it's, demo Van Gordon House.
Correct.
And
It
then,
looks like they're splitting that
That's
between
a
water.
share.
But
and
it's
wastewater.
split
different
with
times.
water, exactly, okay.
One's a 3 and one's a 2.
Mhm.
Well, we're gonna, be really looking at the
I can't
prioritization.
imagine that it would cost that kind of money.
Demo, if there's asbestos especially, it's
Is
asbestos, an asbestos era
is
house.
that
Lead
house
paint
a
too, isn't it?
historic
And lead paint,
home?
yeah, those two things are really expensive to get rid of.
But
Yeah.
is that a historic home? And that's what I question, because it's so old, if it has to get moved and it can't get demolished, I mean, excuse me for asking.
Uh,
I mean, how does that?
we don't know, I mean, I don't think we,
If it ever became like a real, I mean, right now, it's not a project that's been identified as something that is gonna happen, within this year or next year. So I would imagine we'd have to start putting a project plan together, which would be asking those types of questions and getting quotes and everything on that.
Yeah. and as part of the new, format, we're also using, the prioritization system is gonna be.
Yeah, I will look
Updated
at
too,
that
that's-
for next year,
right.
where if they're still on there, because we've done quite a lot of cleanup and a lot of work
Mhm.
on these lists, so I'll make a note to make sure that they're the same priority.
Well, there was 2 water meters on that property too,
Well, yeah,
so I don't know where those are.
sitting out there. We'll see. Eventually, we'll
Wow.
see. They're gonna take it apart. I got that. That's for water, I guess, water and what, the water department.
What's the average timing on number 2 projects at this point?
Yeah. When, that's it.
Got some time.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next, item 4B.
And so,
This is the new, just to introduce it to our audience on Zoom. Discuss and review the investment policy revisions and approved recommendations to the CCSD Board of Directors. Denise, you can take it from here.
okay, so what we're considering, so this was a recommendation when we went out and got some investment advisors. I mean, also this is against our best practice to not have updated a policy since
2002.
2002. So we have, starting on page 93, starting on page 93 and 99 is a new, those are,
The old ones.
our old policies.
Yeah.
Okay, so our new policy, part of, contracting with these investment advisors is they, provided me with an updated investment policy to make sure that it was compliant with all the current laws. It's very heavy on compliance with, the appropriate laws that we have to follow as a state agency and as a CSD. And that's one of the reasons we chose this investment advisor, is he's very familiar with what's required of us. So, we can talk about, so from page 80 to 92
92.
is basically their recommendation for our new investment policy. So we can talk about it. I can take notes. And again, I would go back to them and make sure any changes we wanted to make were not, bringing us out of compliance.
Yeah. Ask for questions from the committee. I just wanted to note that there's also at the very end here, a short, this is from the CSDA handbook of model policies. There's their version of the investment policy that we recommend. And you'll notice it's quite general. And this is the new policy, or the proposed policy, is quite a bit more specific than our old 2002 policy, though in general outlines, it's pretty much the same direction, but it's much more detailed. With a couple of exceptions. Anyway, first of all, I'll open up the committee for questions.
And and to mention too, it's quite a few pages of terms
Yes.
definition, so the policy itself is,
They try to explain duration.
Good luck.
Okay, just one of those. Okay, Karen, yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
At the bottom of page 4, or in page 83, item 3 regarding the local agency investment fund. At the very end of that page, a sentence begins, a review of the pool fund is required when part of the list of authorized payments, and then there's a subjective clause. But is there a verb left out there? That doesn't make any sense to me, so I'm willing to believe that I'm just not reading it correctly.
This is the one on 83 or 82.
It's 83 and 84.
Oh, I see.
The very last sentence on page
It's required.
83, and then it continues on page 84, of course, but I'm wondering
Oh.
if after authorized investments, is there a verb missing, or,
Yeah. I kind of noticed that.
because I don't understand.
Yes,
There's something missing.
there was something missing. Is missing or is? And part of the list of authorized investments is something, it should be a verb and something else.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for not making me feel crazy. Because I just couldn't make that sentence make sense. Also, as usual, found a whole bunch of grammatical things having to do with consistency and ease of reading. and I don't want to take up any time in the meeting now, but perhaps Ms. Fritz and I could have a phone conversation, or I can come and see you or something at your
Yep.
convenience.
Okay. Good.
It having nothing to do with,
Yeah.
with changing words or anything like that.
Any question? Scott?
Yeah, just on, you made reference to the fact that, you know, some of this may be due to legislation. Is the maturity that we're limited to, is that a legislated item? It seems like we're limited to, you know, 5-year issues and less for duration, yield, and maturity.
Sure, yeah.
It seems to make reference to, the policy spells out that they'd like to limit it to 5-year or less for interest rate risk, but doesn't specify whether that's legislated for.
I'll ask that question.
And
because
if-
I mean, I think we have ones that are greater than 5 years.
Yeah,
Well, greater than 5 years, to when they mature, we could have like a 30-year bond, which is 5 years away from maturity,
Mhm.
from maturing.
okay,
It's, you know, I think the idea is that
Well-
you don't want to get anything that you can't, that won't mature in 5 years,
Mm,
whether it's, you know, whatever
Longer
past is,
term,
yeah,
yeah.
whatever past history is. That's the
yeah,
idea.
I just, you wouldn't want to see us unnecessarily limit ourselves to investments of 5 years or less,
Mhm.
particularly if we have,
yeah,
you
we
know,
have
certain-
longer ones.
Okay.
So I'll get a better,
Yeah, that was a little
Oh.
confusing to me, why we want to handcuff ourselves that way, particularly if you're matching up certificate of participation money. We can invest that for a longer term if positive rate environment
Yeah.
presents itself.
I was gonna ask about the COP money. Isn't that managed, is that covered by this, or is that specific? There's specific rules about how that fund is going to be,
there's rules,
both covered and paid down and so forth.
yeah, there's rules to, with the trustee has complete control of that
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
We can invest that money, but it's all done through the trustee, which I'm working on actually right now. And it would all stay, you know, it's not readily available for us, and any proceeds from any investment in that fund can only be used to like reduce the debt service payment, can't like come into our pocket
Mhm.
to, you know, be added to our investment
Right, right.
earnings.
Yeah, it's sort of a walled,
Yeah.
kind of a walled garden there, yeah.
Let me just,
Yeah.
show you the area that I was referring to was basically under objectives, section 4 with, item 1B, market risk.
What
Within there.
page?
It's on, actually, page 82, so under B,
Market risk.
market risk, third line down. General level of interest rates shall be mitigated by limiting the maximum maturity of any one security to 5 years. And I prefer to match maturity to need of money, you know, cash, cash need.
Mhm.
Um,
And like I said, I know we do have investments now that are longer than 5 years, so I can ask
yeah,
what that 5-year limit is
sure.
referring to, or if it's just stated
Because if
in a
you-
confusing way.
Because if you need money, money from, say, COP or something else, and you need it 8 years from now, you can only buy a 5-year security, you inherently have interest rate risk right there.
Mhm.
Good point, because if you sell it, if you have to cash it, in other words, basically have it, then your risk is that you'll be reinvesting it at a lower
Correct.
yield.
Yes.
Which is always a risk of having something too short term. I had a couple questions, or I noted a couple of things too that, one needs correction. And I guess this is topographical, Karen Owen might have found it, but on page 90 in the glossary here, under risk, the line starts out with risk, degree of uncertainty of return on an asset, period. And then, the next word is safekeeping, see custody, that should be that should be a separate line. Boldface, a separate line there, I noticed that. And I'd also seen that thing that Karen saw. I had a question of, getting back to maybe this thing that, Scott was talking about, a little bit the same thing. Our investment advisors, OIP, they have their own, we have our own, rules that when we, went with them in their contract with them, for what we can invest in and what the maturities are and so forth, I think. Are these rules, how are they different from what OIP does in their contract with us? In other words, they have a wider range of things, or is it pretty much the same?
I think it's the same.
I think it's the same. Yeah, I was gonna say, ask that. They don't go much beyond, they don't go beyond government guaranteed or government insured.
No, they follow.
Securities, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so we do have, we have some US Treasury that is in a 3-month, 1-year, 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year. So we do have some 10-year.
And, whether it's a 10-year or not, depends on when you bought it. If it's less than 5 years yield to maturity,
Mhm.
then it's mirrors the 5-year.
Okay, yeah,
Five-year
that's what I
note.
was saying, but if you have any things that you buy it now and it matures in 10 years, that would be not allowed under this.
Mhm. And then just there's something mitigating in point 14 on page 86. Dealing with maximum maturities. To the extent possible, CCSD will attempt to match its investments to anticipated cash flow requirements, which is excellent. Unless specified in a specific cash flow, district will not invest in securities maturing more than 5 years from the date of purchase. But there is like an out with the agreement of the board.
Mhm.
So just depending, again,
That's,
probably not a super timing issue, but want to make sure that would be expeditious to get that kind of
Yeah.
agreement if the opportunity presented itself.
my sense is that if you have if you have that escape hatch there, basically, where the board can approve it, I think the 5-year rule might be okay.
Yeah.
That might be workable, as long as, in exceptional cases, you can just have it, put it on the consent calendar. And I don't think anybody would have a problem with it.
And I just, want to make sure the advisors are not, handcuffing themselves.
I had a question about a couple of things that were different from the 2002 document. One was, some of the stuff, investment management committee and stuff like that, I think that pretty much is taken care of. But there's a list of prohibited investments on the earlier one. We don't really have a list of prohibited investments, and I wondered if that's necessary to, if that's necessary to cover, because I think it's pretty clear that we only can do a certain kind of investment. And they were very concerned about derivatives back then. This is right after Enron. And I'm questioning, my question is, do you think we need it for Denise? Or we're fine? As I said, they were reacting to certain practices, also by treasurers, by public treasurers that were pretty reckless. Orange County went bankrupt because of one of those at the time. So it's kind of those practices I think have been might have been outlawed in the government code. So I don't know. My feeling is that we don't need it, but I wondered what the thinking was not to have something like that, if there is any.
Maybe just spelling out what we can.
Yeah, is a sufficient thing?
And again, if you look at page 83, authorized and suitable investments is governed by California Government Code sections 53,600.
That might be worth
So
it.
that's what we're following.
Can't remember if I saw something where there was a, minimum rating, like a minimum bond rating on some of the investments or not.
Oh, they have that in the old one.
Okay, maybe that's.
And we don't have it in this one either, I think, because I think the idea is that if you get, it's in the old one. That made sense to me because we're gonna have, federally backed I mean, it's federal government, you're basically, you know, if their rating is, goes lower, it's still the highest, gonna be the highest rating around, so it's pretty much what you've got. They're AAA. They've had short periods when they're not, but that should be okay. One of the short, brief question that may need clarification, or I can just get clarification now, is the delegation of authority. There's a sentence here saying daily management responsibility of the investment program may be delegated to the senior accountant or accountant. Would that be any equivalent to anybody we have on staff or will have on staff? Or is it just finance manager acting as senior accountant?
Yeah, I agree.
We can change that.
Scratch whole thing.
Yeah, we just scratch it. We're not gonna be doing anything,
So just take out the whole sentence.
yeah, there's, you know, daily management. We're not gonna, yeah, just to prevent confusion.
Yeah. I think we're bigger than we are.
Mhm. For no further questions, I'll turn this over to public comment if anybody wants to say anything about this topic. I don't see anybody in the online attendees raising a hand. Mr. Clark. No.
And I can make these changes and bring it back, I think, and meet with Karen and,
That might be the same. I mean, we're not in a big hurry. We're not in a big hurry.
rush. I think,
Right.
you know, my main concern is that we're complying with the government code. Because even if we created a policy that did not adhere to government code, it's my responsibility to make sure that we're following government code, so. I don't think we're in a huge rush, like, we can take our time, I can make those changes, meet with Karen and get it dialed in and bring it back.
Yeah. I also suggest that have we run this by Tim Carmel yet?
No,
We should do that probably, because there may be some things that are,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
um,
So I feel like
Or-
I would do that in the process of bringing it to the board, is have him look at it before it got to the board level. So I
Okay.
think we can make our changes here, bring it back here, then Tim can review it
mhm.
in the process of bringing it to the board.
Okay, so I could, just, you know, she could just continue this item till next meeting. We should be able to get all that done, right?
Yep.
Okay. I don't think that takes a vote, to continue.
One last
Yes.
thing, sorry to
Oh, yeah.
belabor it.
Yeah, Scott.
Point 17 on page 88, you know, quarterly reports being placed on the board of directors meeting agenda. Is there any need to formalize that, or for us to look at it, or to formalize it, we would look at it at the finance committee level? Prior to the board.
This is the,
So just above point 18, the last paragraph in
OS, yeah.
order, again,
Well,
small point.
I would,
In our policies, do we reference committee review?
I don't think we do,
We're going
actually.
through a lot of policies
Yeah.
right now.
we don't have actually technically committee review of, say, the, budget quarterly report isn't really spelled out either. I don't
Okay.
think. We just do it as a practice, as a kind of a best practice.
All right,
Yeah.
that's fine.
I have a question,
Yeah,
Tom, and it's really off the chart here.
Okay.
You know me, does any of this have to comply with the internal revenue?
Well, we don't file taxes as a district, so. I don't know, I'd have to research in the government codes to see if it's in compliance, I mean, with the IRS specifically.
Yeah, because
Or
we,
this franchise, state franchise?
well,
I
it's
don't
the same
know.
kind of thing. That's the,
Yeah,
we
I
don't pay,
don't
we
know.
don't pay income tax.
We don't pay taxes. We don't, yeah, I mean, that sounds odd. We're not required to file tax returns as a CSD.
Not that we're scofflaws.
Yes, not that we're just sit back like that,
Figure out
but,
how to pay taxes.
so I would have to see how, like, the government codes that were ruled by, how those intersect with IRS rules. I'm sure there's some,
There might be some, yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe Carmel, I don't know the logistics of it, so.
Now, our financial advisors are able to tell you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also the auditors. Yeah, yeah, because that's what, they're more closer to that issue, than these guys, than the financial advisors would be. like if we had some kind of partnership, like public-private partnership with a private corporation on something. That might be kind of interesting, but we don't. So I think we're kind of clear of all that kind of stuff. So anyway, next meeting, we'll, this will come back with an edited, finalized version that's been run by, our, district legal counsel.
I think I won't run it by it until we.
Oh, until we look at it,
Yes.
then we'll,
Then I'll run it.
on the
by
way to the board.
On the way to the board.
Okay. As long as that gets done.
Yeah.
Keith?
Yeah, request it, when you do those edits, is it possible for you to bold them or something for the copy that we're going to review?
Yep,
So
I
that
will
we
do
can see
track
that?
changes, so
That's
it'll be red.
Okay. Great.
I learned my lesson on that one.
Thank you. My final item is the appointment of an ad hoc subcommittee on long-term financial planning. Again, maybe I'll turn this over to Denise, but this is a it's a template that Denise has already been working on for figuring out how much we'll need to spend over the next 10 years, essentially.
10 years?
Mine's 30 years.
But
Draft thing is a 30-year presentation.
well, 10 years.
I mean, I
It's gotten
think-
bigger, but I mean, well, the idea is, you can talk about this a little bit. The idea is that we want to look at our, essentially capital needs, and get a sense of what we, have to do at some point and have to sort of be ready for it at some point, rather than just letting stuff kind of like surprise us. This has to do with the upkeep and, refurbishment of our very large water and sewer infrastructure, all these other things that we, don't really have a, long-term plan for as to what really might need to be done. So, this idea of this subcommittee is to work with the finance director on this plan, to figure out what would go into it. And then I think they'll, parallel to that, they'll be working over at Resources and Infrastructure, Karen Dean's committee, to work on what capital needs, to identify capital needs long-term. So if anything,
Yeah, so this is kind of in
That-
conjunction with the CIP list. So we have our new version of our CIP list, which is looking at, it's itemizing out like current needs and long-term projects. And we're keeping track, a place where we're keeping track of like project to date information, such as the approved budget, any budget increases it's gotten, as well as like year-to-date expenditures and project to date expenditures, which is something we haven't had. So now we have that on the CIP list. I think it gives a lot of information and our ability to pick projects and all of that. But what it's missing and what I'm looking to do is look at all of those projects and the future projects in conjunction with our net income every year and our reserve levels. So when you match all of that together in a presentation, it helps the board make longer term decisions. Or when we're coming forward with the CIP list, saying we have, $500,000 worth of projects or 2 million. I feel like you're not getting the whole picture because you're not looking at it in conjunction with our reserve levels as well as net income levels over. And some of these projects can be, as we decide we want to do it, but it may take 2 years before it actually happens. So then we can, kind of look what the cash flow is actually going to look like for that project. I'm going to spend, $100,000 this year, then 500, and then it's, and I'm thinking of the water main. And then in year 3, I'm going to spend the balance, which is $2 million. So you can see that coming out in conjunction with the reserves. So you can better make decisions about what projects you should approve to go forward. It's also provides me an easy way to do scenarios like, okay, if we're going to do this project this year, what would that look like? What would our reserves look like? Do we have enough money? you know, and what would that do for future planning and kind of, and, if we can get that present, and I have a presentation that I've used in the past that I like, that I'm developing.
Yeah.
President Gray has seen it just to see like, does this make sense to you? So I think the idea was to get the subcommittee to help guide me, and I share the presentation with them and they can help, like, this doesn't make sense, this does make sense, these are some changes. And so basically it would be a tool that I would use to communicate with the board, and subcommittees on, you know, kind of when we're making decisions about long-term projects as well as long-term planning,
Mhm.
as well as like need assessment. Okay, so we have all these projects, but we obviously need money, right? And so I think it's just a more holistic, like, way to look at it and be able to best communicate with the board, the general manager, committees, the public. It also show where we really like maybe are missing, right? And where the funding is missing.
This,
Yeah.
this also ties in with concerns that were raised actually, here and also with the board about the reserve policy revision that was approved. The deficiency that was seen in that document is primarily about not having a requirement for a certain level of reserves. And this ties into that because to determine what is needed in a given fund in reserves, you have to kind of know what long-term liabilities are. Like what will likely have to be done in coming years. And we don't have that capability now to really look into that, even that fairly near future, to decide whether it should be 20% of revenues, 30%, 15%, in any given year. And this will come back to be integrated into a new reserve policy, which I think this year, at the end of this year, or early next year, this committee will be developing a new reserve policy, hopefully based on the work that this subcommittee is doing.
Identify the 3 issues that we're seeing, which was 1, the long-term,
Yeah.
long-range planning. 2 was, the minimum or max, no.
I mean, or maximum,
The
you know,
minimum
how it
or
relates to that,
maximum.
yeah, right.
And then there was another one, I think.
Escapes me now, but,
Yeah, there's one other item that is actually listed
yeah,
in the staff report that we're gonna work on.
Yeah.
For the reserve.
so,
So we are seeing that all of this, like the CIP list, this long-range planning and reserve policy, it's all, you know, it's all intertwined.
mhm.
So that is the kind of what we'll be working on in this committee. And I do have a working model. And so, it would be like starting from that base and then making adjustments and changes through the subcommittee.
So any questions or anything? And before we hit volunteers, so this would be a 2-member committee. I don't want to rush. It's actually pretty interesting, I think, like, if you like,
You have a broken
like
down-
spreadsheets.
Yes.
Spreadsheets.
Yeah, so the sample I did for, President Gray is water, just because they're our biggest, and I was using it for my own, for myself, like I would do this just for myself to use in my work to make sure I'm making like appropriate recommendations. So I kind of did this when we were looking at, I think, water meters. I was
Yeah.
just like, I really want to see what we've already encumbered, what we promised we're gonna do and the future. So, I have done it so for water so far, but yes, I would do one for each department.
Yeah, there's some like long-term things that are done on the utility side, in particular, like water meter, replacing the bodies of the water meters is kind of like isn't like a 10-year. It goes on, I mean, it goes on for a long period. So you have to kind of like budget for a long period of activity and expense, which this is sort of designed for.
Yeah, but it would be for each department.
First,
I had a question before we go.
okay,
Will we be seeing I had a chance to sit down on Karen's committee and go through the CIP. And will we be taking a look at that as a committee? Or,
With the budget, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
that
with the
comes
budget, definitely,
through
yeah.
the preliminary budget,
okay,
and so that you will be seeing that next month.
oh, okay, yeah, thanks.
okay, I'll just take 2 volunteers first. Scott, okay, good. Anyone else? Karen, Cheryl, Dave.
Said spreadsheet. You had me in spreadsheet.
I'm interested in
Okay.
that too.
So I'll appoint Scott McCann and Keith Hendrickson to this new subcommittee to work on long-term financial planning. I didn't ask for public comment, by the way. I didn't see a hand up though, so.
So would you start that next fiscal year? That subcommittee?
Yeah, I'll probably try and start it. I mean, I'm really focused on getting this budget together, so probably
I
at the
know you
same
are.
time in July. This one's a little near and dear to my heart, so I kind of would
You
like.
might,
to-
you might after the preliminary budget will be good in, Hamilton, city of first, June,
Yeah,
obviously.
once I get
Yeah.
it ready for this committee, which I have to really get it ready in the
Yeah,
next
you
couple
do.
weeks. Then it's really just updates. So my work right now is like in the next 2 to 3 weeks for the preliminary budget. So once I get that done, I will open up. I mean, the overhead committee, we decided to meet in July, so that's fine. I'm anticipating this one probably, July. Just, yeah, I have a lot of stuff to do between now
Yeah, I think we'll
and
do
June.
So
Indeed.
next fiscal year.
Yes, next fiscal year.
Well, unless there's anything else, this item, which I think there wouldn't be at this point, we'll move on to future agenda items, and we have a couple already, I think, in works, obviously. The preliminary budget was gonna be out at the next meeting. And, we're gonna come back with the, updated, edited and finalized, investment policy. And the, any others anyone wants to bring forward?
Are you taking, suggestions for,
Yes.
Tom?
Yeah.
I would like to know why we're not on Transparent, California.
We are. I submit to them yearly. For the wages?
Yeah,
Yeah, we are. I have to submit to them. I have to have that done in like 7 days.
oh, okay, so it's. Okay.
And that covers the prior fiscal year, right?
It covers
Correct,
it about 4 years.
Yeah.
It's up to the prior fiscal year.
Yeah.
So let me look on there and see if I can find it. Just and shoot you the link, but I do submit, information to them every year.
Well, they're not showing it.
All right, let me poke around on there and see what I can find and why we're not on there.
Can you send me that as well?
Okay.
Thanks. It's just transparentcalifornia.org, I think. It has everything.
Transparent California.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit.
Yeah, the Sacramento Bee has a really nice, like anyone who works for the state of California. I don't know if we're on that one. I don't know where I'm imagining they're pulling it from the same source, but I used to go on that one quite a bit, to look at salaries. So you know what I'll do is I'll send the link to, President Gray, and then he can disseminate it to the whole committee.
Yeah, that's good. Any other suggestions for a future agenda item? Things might come up in the meantime, but I think the preliminary budget probably, and, it's gonna keep us pretty well occupied. And I guess there will not be a report from either of the newer, new ad hoc committees, ad hoc subcommittees. So, without further ado, this meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:09 a.m.
Wow.